here we are. Uh, First reading video. I think I want to go with the title "Let's Read" to kind of, since it's still what I consider to be a gaming channel. I'll play on Let's Play. So, something to know about me. I really like books. Um, I have a bunch on my phone to be able to read, but it's not really much of a replacement for a hardcover, especially hardcover. But when they're old, they have like a very unique scent, and it's one of my favorite scents. So I have, as you can see, at least there and other places, a lot of books. And as you know, I've been wanting to do something like this on my channel where I basically perform like an audiobook, I guess. I'd like to say a little bit more because there's actually quite a few storytelling channels out there, but they typically have like a droning image or possibly the words popping up. And this is a little bit more of a reactionary sort of thing. Get to see me, and I hope that that's a little, entertaining. We'll see. I this has been a part of the channel that as much as I wanted to do it, I knew would be questionably received. So we'll see. Um, yeah, I'm still in like cold attire because it snowed today and it's still frigid outside. So I don't know. Haven't changed yet. So let's just go right into the story I want to read. It is The Silmarillion. There's a bunch of books I could have picked, but I love this story. It's pretty much my favorite. And this is the first printing, first American edition, 1977, Silmarillion. So if there's deviances from the version this story has changed quite a bit. Even while Tolkien was still alive, he was constantly in a state of trying to edit it. So, and it was, to my understanding, never fully finished. But yeah. So Christopher Tolkien has a foreword where he says, "In the difficult and doubtful task of preparing the text of the book, I was greatly assisted by Guy Kay, who worked with me." So yeah, his son basically helped to try and tie up the finish to this. And also, looking at this, suddenly realized that there's a lot of pronunciations that I might have wrong. I do not speak Elvish, and as much as I adore that he made a language for them, I never really memorized it. So, this is Anulindale, the music of the Aenar. There was Eru, the One, who in Arda is called Iluvatar, and he made the first Aenar, the Holy Ones, that were the offspring of his thought, and they were with him before aught else was made. And he spoke to them, propounding to them themes of music, and they sang before him, and he was glad. But for a while they sang only each alone, or but a few together, while the rest hearkened. For each comprehended only that part of the mind of Iluvatar from which he came, and in the understanding of their brethren they grew but slowly. Yet ever as they listened they came to deeper understanding, and increased in unison and harmony. And it came to pass that Iluvatar called together all of the Aenar, and declared to them a mighty theme, unfolding to them things greater and more wonderful than he had yet revealed. And the glory of its beginning and the splendor of its end amazed the Aenar. so that they bowed before Iluvatar and were silent. Then Iluvatar said to them, "Of the theme I have declared to you, I will now that ye make in harmony together a great music. And since I have kindled you with the flame imperishable, you shall show forth your powers in adorning this theme, each with his own thoughts and devices, if you will. But I will sit and hearken, and be glad that through you great beauty has been wakened into song." Then the voices of the Aenar, like unto harps and lutes, and pipes and trumpets, and viols and organs, and like unto countless choirs, singing with words, began to fashion the theme of Iluvatar to great music. And a sound arose of endless interchanging melodies, woven in harmony that passed beyond hearing into the depths of the heights, and into the heights. And the places of the dwelling of Iluvatar were filled to overflowing, and the music and the echo of the music went out into the void, and it was not void. Never since have the Aenar made music like to this music, though it has been said that a greater still shall be made before Iluvatar by the choirs of the Aenar and the children of Iluvatar at the end of days. Then the themes of the Iluvatar shall be played aright, and take being in their moment of utterance, for all shall then understand fully his intent in their part, and each shall know the comprehension of each, and Iluvatar shall give to their thoughts the secret fire, being well pleased. But now Iluvatar sat and hearkened, and for a great while seemed good to him, for in the music there were no flaws. But as the theme progressed, it came to the heart of Melkor to interweave matters of his own imagining that were not in accord to the theme of Iluvatar, for he sought therein to increase the power and glory of the part assigned to himself. To Melkor, among the Aenar, had been given the greatest gifts of power and knowledge, and he had a share in all of the gifts of his brethren. He had gone often alone into the void places, seeking the imperishable flame, for desire grew hot within him to bring into being things of his own, and it seemed to him that Iluvatar took no thought for the void, and he was impatient for its emptiness. Yet he found not the fire, for it is within Iluvatar. But being alone, he had begun to conceive thoughts of his own, unlike those of his brethren. Some of these thoughts he now wove into his music, and straightway discord arose around him, and many that sang nigh him grew despondent, and their thought was disturbed by and their music faltered. But some began to attune their music to his rather than the thought which they had at first. Then the discord of Melkor spread ever wider, and the melodies which had been heard before foundered in a sea of turbulent sound. But Iluvatar sat and hearkened until it seemed that about his throne was a raging storm, as of dark waters that made war upon one another in an endless wrath that would not be assuaged. Then Iluvatar arose, and the Aenar perceived that he smiled, and he lifted his left hand, and a new thing began amidst a storm, like and yet unlike the former theme, and it gathered power and had new beauty. But the discord of Melkor rose in uproar and contended with it, and again there was war of sound more violent than before, until many of the Aenar were dismayed, and sang no longer, and Melkor had the mastery. Then again Iluvatar arose, and the Aenar perceived that his countenance was stern, and he lifted his right hand, and behold, a third theme grew amongst the confusion, and it was unlike the others. For it seemed at first soft and sweet, a mere rippling of gentle sounds and delicate melodies, but it could not be quenched, and it took to itself power and profundity, and it seemed at last that there were two musics progressing at one time before the seat of Iluvatar, and they were utterly at variance. There was one deep and wide and beautiful, but slow and blended with the immeasurable sorrow, which with its beauty, chiefly came. The other had now achieved a unity of its own, and it was loud, vain, endlessly repeated. And it had little harmony, but rather a clamorous unison, as if many trumpets braying upon a few notes. And it essayed to drown the other music by violence of its voice, but it seemed that its most triumphant notes were taken by the other and woven into its own solemn pattern. In the midst of this strife, whereat the halls of Iluvatar shook, and a tremor ran into the silences yet unmoved, Iluvatar arose a third time, and his face was terrible to behold. Then he raised both his hands, and in one chord, deeper than the abyss, higher than the firmament, piercing as the light of the eye of Iluvatar, the music ceased. And Iluvatar spoke, and he said, Mighty are the Aenar, and the mightiest among them is Melkor. But that he may know, and all the Aenar, that I am Iluvatar, those things that ye have sung, I will show them forth, that ye may have seen what ye have done, and thou, Melkor, shalt see that no theme may be played that hath not its uttermost source in me, nor can any alter the music in my despite. For he that attempteth this shall prove but mine instrument in the devising of things more wonderful, which he himself hath not imagined. Then the Aenar were afraid, and they did not yet comprehend the words that were said to them, and Melkor was filled with shame, of which came a secret anger. But Iluvatar arose in splendor, and he went forth from the fair regions that he had made for the Aenar, and the Aenar followed him. But when they came into the void, Iluvatar said to them, Behold your music! And he showed them a vision, giving them sight where there was only hearing, and they saw a new world made visible before them, and it was globed amid the void, and it was sustained therein, but was not of it. And now they looked and wondered. This new world began to unfold its history, and it seemed to them that it lived and grew. And when the Aenar had gazed for a while and were silent, Iluvatar said again, Behold your music! This is your minstrelsy, and each of you shall find contained herein, amid the design that I set before you, all those things which it may have seemed that he himself devised or added, and thou, Melkor, wilt discover all the secret thoughts of thy mind, and wilt perceive that they are but part of a whole and tributary to its glory. And many other things Iluvatar spoke to the Aenar in that time, and because of their memory of his words, and a knowledge that each has a music that he himself made, the Aenar know much of what was and is yet to come, and few things are unseen by them. Yet some things there are that they cannot see, neither alone nor taking counsel together. For to none of but himself has Iluvatar revealed all that he has in store, and in every age there come forth things that are new and have no foretelling, for they do not proceed from the past. And so it was, as this vision of the world was played before them, the Aenar saw that it contained things which they had not thought. And they saw with amazement the coming of the children of Iluvatar, and the habitation that was prepared for them. They perceived that they themselves, in the labor of their music, had been busy with the preparation of this dwelling, and yet knew not that it had any purpose beyond its own beauty. For the children of Iluvatar were conceived by him alone, and they came with the third theme, and were not in the theme which Iluvatar propounded from the beginning, and none of the Aenar had part in their making. Therefore, when they beheld them, the more did they love them, being things other than themselves, strange and free, wherein they saw the mind of Iluvatar reflected anew, and learned yet a little more of his wisdom, which otherwise had been hidden even from the Aenar. Now the children of Iluvatar are elves and men, the firstborn and the followers. And amid all the splendors of the world, its vast halls and spaces, and its wheeling fires, Iluvatar chose a place for their inhabitation in the deeps of time, and in the middle of the innumerable stars. And this inhabitation might seem a little thing to those who consider only the majesty of the Aenar, and not the terrible sharpness, as who should take the whole field of Arda for the foundation of a pillar, and so raise it until the cone of its summit were more bitter than a needle, or who consider only the immeasurable vastness of the world, which still the Aenar are shaping, and not the minute precision to which they shape all things therein. But when the Aenar had beheld its habitation in a vision, and had seen the children of Iluvatar rise therein, then many of the most mighty among them bent all their thought and their desire towards that place, and of these Melkor was chief. Even as he was in the beginning the greatest of the Aenar who took part of the music, and he feigned even for himself at first that he desired to go thither and order all things for the good of the children of Iluvatar, controlling the turmoils of the heat and the cold that had come to pass through him. But he desired rather to subdue his will, both elves and men, envying the gifts with which Iluvatar promised to endow them, and he wished himself to have servants and subjects, and to be called Lord, and to be master over other wills. But the other Aenar looked upon this habitation set within the vast spaces of the world, which elves called Arda, the earth, and their hearts rejoiced in light, and their eyes, beholding many colors, were filled with gladness. But because of the roaring of the sea, they felt a great unquiet. And they observed the winds and the air, and the matters of which Arda was made, of iron, stone, and silver, and gold, and many substances. But of all these, water they most greatly praised. And it is said by the Eldar that in water there lives yet the echoes of the music of the Aenar, more than in any substance else that is in this earth. And many of the children of Iluvatar hearken still unsated to the voices of the sea, and yet know not from what they listen. Now to water had the Ainu, whom I believe it was supposed to be Aenar, but it is missing an R, whom the elves called Umul, turned his thought, and of all most deeply he was instructed by Iluvatar in music. But of the airs and winds Manwe most had pondered, who was the noblest of the Aenar. Of the fabric of earth had Ule thought, to whom Iluvatar had given skill and knowledge scarce less than to Melkor. But the delight and pride of Ule was in the deed of making, and in the thing made, and neither in the possession nor in his own mastery. Wherefore he gives and hoards not, and is free from care, passing ever on to some new work. And Iluvatar spoke to Ulmo, and said, Seest thou not how here in this little realm, in the deeps of time, Melkor hath made war upon thy province? He hath bethought him of bitter cold immoderate, and yet hath not destroyed the beauty of thy fountains, nor of thy clear pools. Behold the snow, and the cunning work of frost. Melkor hath devised heats and fire without restraint, and hath not dried up thy desire, nor utterly quelled the music of the sea. Behold rather the height and glory of the clouds, and the ever-changing mists, and listen to the fall of rain upon the earth. And in these clouds thou art drawn nearer to Manwe, thy friend, whom thou lovest. Then Ulmo answered, Truly, water is become fairer now that my heart, is become now fairer than my heart imagined. Neither had my secret thought conceived a snowflake, nor in all my music contained the falling of rain. I will seek Manwe, that he and I will make melodies ever to thy delight. And Manwe and Ulmo have from the beginning been allied, and in all things have served most faithfully the purpose of Iluvatar. But even as Ulmo spoke, and while the Aenar were yet gazing upon this vision, it was taken away and hidden from their sight, and it seemed to them that in that moment they perceived a new thing, darkness, which they had not known before except in thought. But they had become enamored of the beauty of the vision, engrossed in the unfolding of the world which came to there to being, and their minds were filled with it. For the history was incomplete, and the circles of time not full wrought, when the vision was taken away. And some have said that the vision ceased ere the fulfillment of the dominion of men, much like the story, and the fading of the firstborn. Wherefore, though the music is over all, the Valar have not seen as with sight the later ages, or the ending of the world. Then there sat unrest amongst the Aenar, but Iluvatar called to them and said, I know the desire in your minds, that what ye have seen should verily be, not only in your thought, but even as ye yourselves are, and yet other. Therefore I say, Yea, let these things be, and I will set forth into the void of flame imperishable, and it shall be the heart of the world, and the world shall be. And those of you that will may go down into it. And suddenly the Aenar saw, afar off, a light, as if it were a cloud without having a heat of flame, and they knew this was no vision only, but that Iluvatar had made a new thing, Ea, the world that is. Thus it came to pass that that of the Aenar some abode still with Iluvatar beyond the confines of the world, but others, and among them some of the greatest and most fair, took the leave of Iluvatar, and descended into it. But this condition Iluvatar made, or as it is necessary of their love, that their power should thenceforth be contained and bound to the world, to be within it forever, until it is complete, so that they are its life, and it is theirs. And therefore they are named the Valar, the powers of the world. But when the Valar entered into Ea, they were at first astounded, and at a loss, for it was as if naught was yet made which they had seen in vision, and all was but on point to begin, yet unshaped. And it was dark, for the great music had been but the growth and flowering of thought in the timeless halls, and the vision only a foreshowing. But now they had entered in at the beginning of time, and the Valar perceived that the world had been but foreshadowed and foresung, and they must achieve it. So began their great labors in wastes unmeasured and unexplored, and in ages uncounted and forgotten, until the deeps of time, and in the midst of the vast halls of Ea, there came to be that hour and that place where was made the habitation of the children of Iluvatar. And in this work the chief part was taken by Manwë and Ule and Ulmo, though Melkor too was there from the first, and he meddled in all that was done, turning it, if he might, into his own desires and purposes, and he kindled great fires. When therefore earth was yet young and full of flame, Melkor coveted it, and he said to the other Valar, what voice should we give Melkor? How deep can I go? This shall be my own kingdom, and I name it unto myself. But Manwë was the brother of Melkor, in the mind of Iluvatar, and he was the chief instrument of the second theme that Iluvatar had raised up against the discord of Melkor. And he called unto himself fields of Arda, and aided Manwë. Skip the line. Called unto himself many spirits, both greater and less, and they came down into the fields of Arda, and aided Manwë, lest Melkor should hinder the fulfillment of their labor forever, and earth should wither ere it flowered. And Manwë said to Melkor, this kingdom thou shalt not take, for thine own. Wrongfully, for many others have labored here, no less than thou. And there was strife between Melkor and the other Valar, and for a time Melkor withdrew and departed to other regions, and did there what he would. But he did not pursue the kingdom of Arda, did not put the desire of Arda from his heart. Now the Valar took to themselves shape and hue, and because they were drawn to the world by the love of the children of Ilúvatar, for whom they hoped, they took shape after that manner which they had beheld in the vision of Ilúvatar, save only in majesty and splendor. Moreover, their shape comes from the knowledge of the visible world, rather than the world itself, and they need it not, save only as use as a raiment. And yet they may be naked and suffer no less of our being. Therefore, is someone speaking? No. Why are they saying we? Okay. Therefore the Valar may walk, if they will, unclad, and even the Eldar cannot perceive them, though they may be present. But when they desire to clothe themselves, the Valar take upon them forms as of male and some as female. For that difference of temper they had from the beginning, and it is but bodied forth in the choice of each, not made by the choice, even as with us male and female may be shown by the raiment, but is not made thereby. But the shapes wherein the great ones array themselves, not at all times like the shapes of kings and queens of the children of Ilúvatar, for at times they may clothe themselves in their own thought, made visible in the forms of majesty and dread. And the Valar drew unto them many companions, some less, some well nigh as great themselves. And they labored together in the ordering of the earth, and the curbing of its tumults. When Melkor saw what was done, and that the Valar walked on earth as powers visible, clad in the raiment of the world, and were lovely and glorious to see, and blissful, and that the earth was becoming as a garden for their delight, for its turmoils were subdued, his envy grew then greater within him, and he took also visible form. But because of his mood and the malice that burned within him, his form was dark and terrible. And he descended upon Arda in power and majesty, greater than any of the Valar, as a mountain that wades in the sea, and has its head above the clouds, and is clad in ice and crowned with smoke and fire. And the light of the eyes of Melkor was like the flame that withers, with heat that pierces with deadly cold. Thus began the first battle of the Valar with Melkor, for the dominion of Arda. And of those tumults the elves know but little. For what has here been declared is come from the Valar themselves, with whom the Eldali spoke in the land of the Valinor, and by whom they were instructed. But little would the Valar ever tell of the wars before the coming of elves. Yet it is told among the Eldar that the Valar endeavored ever, in despite of Melkor, to rule the earth, and to prepare it for the coming of the firstborn, and they built lands that Melkor destroyed.